Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope everybody is having a great conference so far. Convention, excuse me. We are absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you. Raise it up. My name is Eric, and my sole responsibility tonight is to introduce our incredible guest speaker. I am completely paid up on my $5 donation to Wikipedia, and so with zero guilt whatsoever, I can tell you that this gentleman is the co-founder of several space companies and nonprofits, including Deep Space Industries, Orbital Outfitters, the New Worlds Institute, and the Space Frontier Foundation. But let's be serious. We are in the middle of a space exploration revolution at this point. This man has sent some of our first tourists into space, and when that movie is made of that revolution, he will be considered one of the founding fathers of this space revolution. I'd like to introduce to you our guest speaker for tonight, Mr. Rick Tumlinson.
Wow. This is where you put on your 3D glasses. That's pretty cool. The end of the movie will actually reveal that I am the true father of Bob Zoomer. I am your father. We're genetic clones and something went terribly wrong with one of us. So I'm going to talk about several things, but I'm going to start with a commercial because my company, we paid for the ticket to come out here, so I have to do it. No, I'm really excited. The company I'm working in right now, every once in a while I forget how hard it is to do real business, and I leave activism and I go work on something, and this is SpaceFund. We're a venture capital company, and we're basically raising funds to invest in those kinds of companies that are going to profit from and help accelerate the development of the frontier and are going to, we believe, spring up as part of the ecosystem that's being created by people like Bezos, Musk, etc. Transportation costs are going to come down, and all kinds of possibilities are going to occur, and I'll get to that later in my talk. So we're about opening space to everybody and enabling everybody to help open that frontier. Eventually, we'll want to get to the point where regular people who aren't necessarily accredited investors can invest in space. We're starting off with a fund, though, that is a standard SEC type fund. And we have two funds we're working on. One's a $50 million fund, and we're doing a thing called the Rapid Deployment Fund, the RDF, because you can't do anything space without an acronym. And that is, those are open to accredited investors. If you're interested, talk to me afterwards, or Megan Crawford, our business manager. It's, again, we're moving very quickly. The reason we have the RDF is to prove the concept. There haven't been a lot of moments of high profit or anything like this in the field yet, so we're trying to prove some things with a small fund. It's very interesting and a lot of fun. I also, this is just going to blow my mind all night. A nonprofit is the EarthLight Foundation, and the New Worlds Conference is something we have in Austin. It's coming up next month. You all are invited. I'm going to, flip the favor, and Dr. Zubrin will be speaking at our conference. We would love to have you come down. It's a lot of fun. It's not like any space conference you will have ever seen, including the fact that we have given away 50% of our tickets to women. And we're going for parity on stage. We're not there yet, but maybe 30 to 40% female speakers. And you're going to hear about things that don't have anything to do with space. And you'll hear about space. And you'll hear music. And there'll be art. It's about the culture of space. And then we have the Space Cowboy Ball, which asks the question, what would you wear to a formal party on Mars in 100 years? Because I was going to throw a black tie gala, and people said, dude, you're in Austin. Nobody's going to wear a tie. So we have sort of a steamed space punk party. We give out the Space Cowboy Award. Last year, we had this other bald guy. He's got a bookstore. Bezos, that's his name. This year, should I mention it? Okay. This year, we have another somewhat famous person coming to accept the award. but it's music, dance, we party, and we fund some educational activities. And we're at the Bullock Museum of Texas History, which is an amazing place with a 4-story rotunda and all of that. So, look, the future's not going to remember this kind of stuff. Just not. Nobody's going to care who tweeted what. What they're going to remember is whether we got across the bridge from now to the future. That's what people are going to care about. That's what they're going to look back and see. We tried it before, and I know some of you have seen me talk before. I always to certain themes. I believe in repetition. As a friend of mine once pointed out, Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech 100 times before he did it on the Mall. Nobody remembers the first 99. I'm not comparing myself to Martin Luther King, but the fact is, some of these messages need to be repeated, and we have to hear them over and over again. And I'm saying that because I'm looking out in the field and I'm seeing a lot of veterans. I know a lot of you people, and you've been around. But we did have this one race to go out in space. At the end of the day, unfortunately, all we had was flags and footprints. And that was because our minds hadn't expanded into the idea of what we could do with the frontier beyond plant the flag. Remember, the whole goal of the Apollo program was the most expensive selfie ever taken, which was to show that we were bigger and badder than the Soviet Union. That was it. That was the point of the whole mission, was one photograph. Now, what was interesting, though, was even though at the end of the day all we had flags and footprints, there was something else that was a spin-off of Apollo, and it wasn't Velcro or Tang, and I know some of you in the audience remember Tang. For the rest of you, it's an orange-flavored drink that was kind of powdered, and never mind. This was the spin-off. There were kids watching that happen, and it inspired them, and it changed their lives. And they're watching this TV, and they're seeing terrible things, and they're flipping the channel, and there's hatred, and then, oh my God, we're going out into the solar system. And they're flipping the channel, and there's people pounding the table, and more hatred, and war, and rumors of war, and really great role models. I mean, really great role models. And yet we're all going to die. And we had to dive under desks, not because of a shooter, but because somebody was going to blow the entire country up. And yet there are people driving cars on the moon. Mars, we'll get there. And we're building missiles that could wipe us all out and kill the entire planet by pressing a button. And yet those same technologies gave us the hope of an amazing future, and oh my God, it's Captain Kirk. Just flipping the channel, just flipping the channel. Or as they say today, checking out your feed. And there it is, Star Wars, Falcon. A name you hear among certain Rocketeers nowadays. And at the time, because things were so bad, there was a clock that was being counted down, and that was going to be the end of time. The League of Concerned Scientists. That was it. We were 1 minute before midnight. It was a bad time, and it was a good time. And in the middle of all this, we were promised something, that there was going to be this amazing thing called the space shuttle. And the space shuttle was going to fly 50 times a year, and it was going to make it $100 a pound to go into space. And we believed him. It was going to be a completely reusable vehicle, and this is, I think this is Grumman or Boeing. I think it's a Boeing. Pardon?
Douglas, maybe?
Maybe so. I know there's some, see, I told you there's some veterans here. But in the middle of all that, there was a book written by Gerard K. O'Neill. It's called The High Frontier. By the way, there's an amazing documentary coming out sometime this winter. I think it's going to be at Sundance. It's called The High Frontier. It's the story of Dr. O'Neill, one of the great unsung heroes. Now, some of you who are old-timers and hardcore Mars people are going, hold it, but O'Neill was for colonies in space. It wasn't about Mars, man, and da-da-da-da-da. He was about the human settlement of the frontier. Yes, he had a favorite destination. Sagan had a destination. Everybody has a destination. But in the end, it's the idea of being for the frontier. Take your ideas, your dreams, free enterprise, the resources of space, and build a new expansion of human civilization. That was what he was for, and I know because I actually worked for him. That book right there changed everything. It got into the hands of a bunch of those kids that were watching TV. So there was that guy with that bookstore I showed earlier. All right, and he was selling it to his friends in high school. He gave his graduation speech, said, I'm going to build colonies in space. This is not about boys and their toys. I love telling that to people. I speak at a lot of non-space conferences in Europe and other places. And I like explaining to people, this is not about rich boys and their toys. This has got much deeper, much more profound roots. And so those kids were watching and moving out into the world, and they started a revolution, the L5 Society. Some of you may remember that. And other space organizations. They were out there. I was lucky enough with some friends to found a group called the Space Frontier Foundation, which one guy who I know once called pound for pound the most effective space organization on the earth. Until you, I'm going to get to you. It's coming. You're going to be happy.
But you gave me the idea.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I remember a young guy from Martin Marietta showing up at a Space Frontier Foundation conference talking about extracting methane from the Martian atmosphere. And we're like, dude, you need to put like frontier stuff in there and wagons and like make it look really exciting. He came back and he kicked our ass the next year, so to speak. Anyway, then we had this new space revolution. We had people building rockets. People may not realize this. This was Conestoga. It was launched off an island off of Texas, the first commercial rocket ever flown. Now, I don't know how many of you saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but parts of this story start to sound like the part where he tried to build the castle in the swamp and it sank. And we built another one and it sank. All right, well, it does happen, but we keep going. We don't give up. In the end, we actually began to win the revolution. And I'm very proud of the work we did in the Space Frontier Foundation, because at the time, we were the key revolutionaries. And there were some people who lamented the shuttle, the end of the shuttle, and said, well, that's the end of it all. But it wasn't. It was the beginning. We won the revolution, the first phase. It was too easy. I remember going to a foundation conference. Somebody put this on screen right after it came out. We were like, yay, we won. I was like, no, we're like halfway through. We're just getting started. They're going to come at us, and they are. And they're going to keep coming at us, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But things have started to happen, and we've started to see habitats being flown in space. We're starting to build out there. We're getting other folks involved. By the way, we're going to have a nice briefing on the China space program at New Worlds. It's pretty amazing. They're doing some really incredible stuff. Unlike a lot of people, I'm not really worried about it, because I believe about 2 generations in, no matter where you come from, when you're in space, you're going to be, screw you, I'm a Martian, you don't understand my problems, blah, 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 right? Doesn't matter where they're going to come from, right? But the revolution really started to kick in gear when this happened. It's what I call space porn. Oh, baby. Right there, right there. Oh, let's go. Play it again. Do it again. There, okay. So, now we get to the fun part. This is where I start to really get in trouble. I haven't gotten in trouble for a while, so. But now I'm with a venture capital company, and NASA's not one of my customers. So what could possibly go wrong? So first of all is what I call the Elysium Effect, which is a little op-ed I'm working on, I'll be putting out. How many of y'all saw the movie Elysium with Matt Damon? Okay, sort of the village where the 0.1%, the ultimate gated community is built in space, and then Earth is given to everybody else, and screw you. I believe in that effect psychologically is something that could begin to catch on out in the world if we're not careful. Very wealthy people having a great time up in space, leaving the Earth behind, billionaires, people like that. Now, I liked part of the movie because they had some really cool looking effects. But when you start talking about a movie and having great effects, that usually means it's not a great movie anyway. But this is the kind of stuff you're starting to pick up on out there, all right? People are starting to see this as an elitist thing. Remember, we're starting to hear that kind of language out in the world. And I mean, there's no bigger target you could put on your back than building great big rockets and being in the news all the time and doing these kinds of things with your money. It's starting. The other thing is We have a lot of launch companies. Everybody, I'm putting this in because of the venture capital thing we do, that we run into this a lot. There are, I don't know what time it is, about an hour ago, I think there were 130 launch companies, probably 132 by now. That's it, they're breeding. And the problem for us in the venture capital world is they're very glamorous, and people put money into these kinds of companies because they're really excited, because it's rockets, right? But there's probably, at the end of the day, only a need for 5 to 10, maybe. And my friend Megan, who was here somewhere, is going to be at IAC next week, and she'll be presenting a paper that was put together by our company on the demand, the real demand at the end of the day. And what that means is everybody who invested in those under 125 or so are going to feel like they made bad investments. So we're encouraging people to invest in other types of space activities. And, here's an example. Another thing that could go wrong, a major accident. Well, accidents happen. We can't stop everything because of an accident. The problem is the perception or reality of negligence that might be associated with that accident. I, as you heard, had a spacesuit company at one point called Orbital Outfitters. We actually rolled out a life preserver type spacesuit in 2006, because we were told in 2007 they were going to start flying suborbital, quote unquote, tourists into space. Didn't happen. We'll get back to that in a second. But one of the problems was we sat down with one of our friends who was building one of the vehicles, which is now going to be going commercial, and we got a lecture about how perfect the machine was and that it doesn't need emergency spacesuits. I immediately, in my head, saw the congressional hearing. Right? And it all shuts down. It'll never sink. Hubris. Then there's PR stunts. The XPrize failed. I was on the founding board of the XPrize. It failed. It did succeed, but it failed at the same time. Remember, the XPrize was won in 2007, 2006? Right. It was supposed to transform everything. How you doing? And I don't think we're flying yet. What it did do was inspire a generation. What it did do was actually break a record. And that's admirable. But the reason I believe, and I was there, this is a photo I took. The reason I believed it failed is because it was the wrong kind of prize. If you're going to do a prize, the prize needs to be for the accomplishment of developing the technology or service that is immediately post-winning the prize able to translate into utility, so you don't have to go back and get reinvested and do an entire new engineering program to get what the prize was ostensibly going to make happen. I hope you got that. Okay, good. In other words, it should have been a 4-seater. If you could build and fly a 4-seater and fly it the next day, that would have done it. And I remember hanging out with some of the prize competitors. I won't even get into the details of behind-the-scenes stuff. Those of you who are around know it. But we have to do better if we're going to be doing this kind of stuff. That was my suit. We were attached to it happening. It's a great suit, too. Yeah, we had black panels because we knew that there were going to be like older people flying and they needed like slenderizing. The other thing that can go wrong, you could be crushed by the government. Island's Industrial Space Facility. This would have been flying in 89, Dennis? 89? Good to see you too, man. For now.
I'm your harasser.
I know, until you start talking. But look, I mean, it was killed. It was killed to make way for the space station. I worked on MirCorp. We took over the Russian space station, got our asses kicked. Why? Because they couldn't afford to have this little dirt shack Motel 6 kind of thing down the orbital street from where they were building the Grand Hyatt. ITAR, government regulation. This is a curse word for those of us who are actually in the field. Having dangerous friends. I'm sure there are probably a couple people from NASA here, but I'm going to say this anyway. It is not NASA's goal in any way, shape, or form to open, develop, or settle the space frontier. And if you are expecting them to do that, you are sadly delusional. It is not their job. Their job is control and money. Control and money. Money for the centers, money for the aerospace contractors who pay for the congressional people that make the rules, whose staffers set the laws so things happen that benefit those contractors. Not to put you in space. You are a hazard. You are unpredictable. You do not have the right stuff, according to NASA. Period. Do not be deluded. However, if NASA was given the right directions by its congressional bosses, those people could do some pretty amazing things to help us achieve our goals. So it is not about the employees of NASA. It is not about the folks at NASA. They have the dream. They go into those. I know some of these people, a lot of them. They walk in with the same dreams we have. And then there's bad plans. I'm not going to get too much into this because you're going to get about an hour and a half of this in a little while. And it is going to be fun. Ah, God. The lunar toll booth, gateway. Gateway. It's interesting, it's called the gateway. Like you can't go to the moon unless you go through the gateway. I mean, that's almost a Freudian. I don't even think it's Freudian. It's like in your face. You got to come through the government gateway if you're going to the moon. It's like a couple of weeks ago when Elon's standing in front of his vehicle and he's like, we're going to go to do this stuff, and then he gets smacked by the head of NASA. It's like, no, you better pay attention to taking care of our ship. Think about that. He's getting smacked because he's talking about a spacecraft that will fly hundreds of people into space so that he can take care of his government contract to seat 4 or 5 people to a space station. And he's taking, what, some 5% or less of his entire budget to do it. We're there. Are we at? Okay, we're going to rock real fast then. Now, be careful. I don't know how many of you read this article yesterday about the hearing that just occurred. You've got to be careful, okay? Because your biggest ally right now to kill the gateway is Boeing. Because they want money to build a bigger SLS that can take you directly to the moon. And at the congressional hearing yesterday, people were trashing commercial private sector smaller vehicles that might require a gateway. Require, I don't think so, but that's the way it's being framed. Go read this article. It will blow your mind after the debate. I'll let that speak for itself. It's got to die. It's got to die. So I'm going to get to a few more things. Can I go about 5 more minutes? You mind? Bob, do you mind if I go 5 more minutes? Okay. This is the fun part. My favorite guy. Oh, God. Everybody in Syria loves him, too. Anyway. So the people who are into Space Force and the people who want to go to the moon and people who want to get stuff done in space think they found their Isabella. All right, but he's a slightly flawed Isabella. What's interesting is I found this wonderful picture about hitching your horse to the wrong wagon, and I swear to God, the guy on the horse has red hair. But anyway, we have to be careful, because when this guy goes down, our dreams are going to go with him. And if he doesn't go down, it still doesn't matter because the next president who's going to come along is going to be so embittered that anything that this president has anything to do with is going to be like Obama's health care plan to this guy. And he's going to change it and kill it. Or she's going to change it and kill it. This guy is not your audience. These people are your audience. Get over your political stuff, Dennis. We have to have a conversation with those who are going to be in power and explain to them why this is in their interest to achieve their goals so that we can get our goals. I want to win. I do not care about being freaking right. And I don't win until there is a baby born on Mars or the moon. And then there's these guys. Love them. What if they were all at the same hotel and a bomb went off? Seriously. I mean, they're going after Bezos. They're going to tear Amazon to pieces. Elon's going to Twitter himself into an SEC prison cell. And then there's all this stuff about, why it's a bad idea. You know what? I am against the oppression of tardigrades. I think tardigrades need to be able to go anywhere in the freaking solar system that they want to go. And then people can die. Now, I've heard there's been a mystery buyer. I'm hoping it's somebody great. I don't know. His sister. Cool. I hope it doesn't end up in another Long Beach museum. And then there's failure to launch and listen. It's space. That's how we treat it with people. It's space. You should just freaking understand. Star Trek. Haven't you seen Star Trek? Don't you get it? We're just talking to ourselves, people. We're talking to ourselves. So anyway, there's a whole bunch more I'm not going to get into here. I'll skip over that. But I do want to say, hang on, I'm going to roll right through this because I want to do there's an audience participation moment here. A lot of good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Yay, yay, yay. Great, 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 great. This is really exciting. I'd have you in tears by now if we were doing this the right way. Okay, right here. The blue doesn't work real well. If you can read this, pull out your phone and write down one of these people and email them and suggest to them that they should support human settlement. See, there's going to be this great debate about the technologies, the gateways, and things like that. But until we can change the actual language at the top of the ideological pyramid to say that the goal of the United States, and eventually the people of Earth, is the settlement and development of space, everything else is a skirmish. Everything else is a fight against a tide. We have to change the source of the tide to human settlement. And right now, there is one guy that is doing this effectively, named Aaron Osterly. Take out your phones, please, and capture this name. Aaron Osterly. He is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. He is out there right now trying to get the words settlement and development into congressional language, into the NASA Authorization Act. Please support this gentleman. All right? Send him a check, volunteer, work for him, help him out, because he's doing your job. And I do want to wrap up by saying, look, the Space Frontier Foundation used to be the leader in this field. We used to be the policy lead. I have to say, I'm handing it to the Mars Society right now. You guys are kicking it right now, as far as any of the space groups go. And you need to kick it up a notch. Support Aaron. Work with the other people who are getting stuff done. Do not fall into debates about technology. Stay at a high level. Show people what can be done. We have the ability to create a frontier in space. We have an ability to transform the human species and our relationship to the universe. You have that possibility. And the last thing I want to say is that this 100 years that we're in, starting in 1940 to 2040. By the way, I've got a book coming out myself, my first book. You guys write. I'm learning how to sit still for more than half an hour. Anyway, it's called Manifesto, Space Manifesto. Be out in February. One of the most important 100 years in the history of life itself, 1940 to 2040. We've developed the technologies to destroy the planet. We're on the verge of destroying the planet, and yet those same technologies and those same people and the same powers that arose during that period of time can save the Earth and expand the precious life of the mother world into the universe. That's the challenge before you. We don't have to hand our children a future that is lesser than today. We can hand them the opportunity of greatness if we simply do our jobs. Thank you.